What's up, comic book fans? Pete here from Comic Books Transformed, where we talk about the comic book adaptations of your favorite comics into streaming shows and movies. It is time to discuss the finale of the first MCU show to have two seasons. We are talking about the Loki season 2 finale. Brian, uh, was there at any point in this episode where you were like, what the hell is going on?
Yes, many times.
Okay.
I still think. Oh,
go
yeah,
ahead.
go ahead.
Just give me, I kind of want to hear from you your broad opinion on this show and like what you like about it and if you have any problems with it. Just give me a broad thing first. Let's start off broad.
Of the entire show or the episode?
Entire show.
A broad opinion of the entire show. Well, I feel like this second season was very different from the first season.
Good.
And I like this second season a lot better.
Ditto. Yes.
And problems. I guess I feel like the overall problem here is that while I did really, really love this season, it does, and I guess it will influence the MCU. It feels so disconnected and small in a way because it's just centered on these couple characters here.
Yeah.
But I do really enjoy it, and I understand the limitations. Like it can't actually be like a comic book where all these characters show up all the time. They have to work with the cast and whatever there. But given that, I think it did a fantastic job at wrapping up here, and I think this is a wrap up here. I do not think there will be a season 3 of this show. We will see Loki again, I believe.
Right.
But it'll be more of a kind of a cameo sort of thing in one of the bigger movies, I think. And that's going to be it.
Yes. Don't you feel like the way, so spoilers, I don't know if anyone ever watches our shows and has not watched the episode, but like spoilers for the episode, don't you feel like in one of the next 2 Avengers movies, there's going to be a scene where an Avenger or multiple Avengers go to where Loki is now and they interact with him, and maybe Thor is one of those Avengers, maybe not, and they just interact with Loki, and essentially all of this was just to basically set up that scene.
Yes, 100%.
Okay, that's what I thought too. And the thing is that when you have some kind of weird limitation like that, where it's like, oh, we're setting up a cameo, we have to make a whole fucking TV series to set up a cameo, they can still do like a masterful job. If I was going to talk about my like broad strokes for this show, I really enjoyed this season way more than season 1. And it felt kind of like Doctor Who or like Star Trek, where there's like a group of people trying to solve a problem. And it's zany. But the thing that kind of would bother me sometimes is just all of the almost like unnecessary talk about what you have to do to solve the problems. Like you have to expand the loom and then you do this and then the branches will, and it's just like, I get that they're in their world trying to solve these problems, but it's the quickest way to make me just kind of like, tune out.
But if they didn't explain it at all, or they did an extremely lackluster job of it, I think that would be a problem though too.
Right. I totally agreed. And honestly, this season wouldn't really exist without that, right? Because so much of this season is we have this like sci-fi problem that has to be solved with like technology and science. We have to
but this is also a mainstream TV show, so you have to kind of get away with some technobabble that can be sort of understood in some kind of vague concept. Because we don't fucking know physics or anything like that.
No.
And it doesn't exist anyway. Like none of this shit's real.
Yeah, right. But I guess like true writers, like strong writers, and I think that this season does have a strong writing team. They're able to take that gobbledygook and make it somehow serve the characters. Like every time that fucking OB comes on and he says something, even though he's like saying, "Oh, that it's too big. We have infinite possibilities. We've got to change the diameter," all that kind of shit. It's like just him saying it. I feel the urgency just by his acting alone, and I feel for him. And when I think about like what his variant world was like and who he was in his own timeline, I care about that character a lot. I want him to survive.
Yeah.
Like it's like Loki. like Loki, his realization is he doesn't want to lose these friends that he's made, and so he'll do anything to save these friends. And by this last episode, I don't want him to lose any of those friends either.
Yeah.
Even the fucking guy Casey, that like he's like almost like a throwaway character. Like even him, I'm like, yeah, don't lose that guy.
Yeah, no, I wanted everything to stay together, and that's kind of what made kind of his sacrifice in the end so meaningful. I think that that the only thing he could do to save his family, his found family, was to sacrifice himself essentially and his own life and future.
Yes,
So that's kind of why I think this had a very Doom Patrol-esque ending, honestly.
Yes.
I really appreciated that. But this whole episode really is just him trying over and over and over and over again, going to different points in the past, trying to change things. We even go back to the end of season 1 when he and Sylvie are up against or talking to He Who Remains, and he tries to stop her hundreds of times or something like that. Loki spends 10 centuries learning physics so he can try and do things earlier to see if it changes anything, and it's nothing. You kind of see the absolute look of futility in his eyes at various points in the episode.
Yes.
But ultimately, I don't understand what he was able to do. I mean, I get that he was revitalizing these strands of time, but I don't understand how or why. I guess.
Yes. So let's unpack that. That's actually the thing I want to talk about. It's kind of the thumbnail that I've made for this episode too. I would recommend, Brian, when you're done, to go check out the Emergency Awesome channel. I've been watching that a lot recently with our shows that we've been reviewing, and he does a really great breakdown of this episode, and I thought it was very helpful. But what he's implying is that Loki is taking like thousands of years to do all of this. Like he's taken hundreds of years to learn physics. Then he's tried these things over and over again to where he eventually learns how to manipulate time, right? There's that one scene where He Who Remains is talking to him, and then Loki's able to just like freeze Sylvie himself or something, or he's able to freeze He Who Remains, I think.
No, I don't think he freezes He Who Remains, but he says I really liked that He Who Remains calls out like, "Oh, I'm surprised you haven't learned that yet." And then a few beats later, he's like, "Yeah, motherfucker, I did."
Yeah, right. So it shows that he has been learning, and he's just been becoming more and more powerful, right?
Yeah.
And then He Who Remains even says this one line of, maybe do this 1,000 more times or do this for another 1,000 years. So the idea is that like Loki has just been doing this over and over again. And when he jumps through time, he kind of goes into his previous self. So it's not like he could age even. He's just kind of going back into his younger self, right? So he's just sort of aging in knowledge, but not physically. So, okay, so let's just go through each part, pick this apart piece by piece, figure out if we're on the same page and if we get it. So I think the implication is that He Who Remains is essentially trying to train Loki to become his successor.
That's a great question, and I'm not sure. That is very possible, but I can't decide if that was He Remains setting up this preordained path for Loki, or is Loki kind of like bucking the system and kind of overcoming what He Remains foresaw. I can't figure that part out, but it's got to be one of those two things.
Yeah, my personal opinion is that He Who Remains does have the predicament that he mentions in the first season, where it's like he's just stuck there at the end of time, and he probably just wants it to end. He's just stuck there, and everything that's happened, he has some kind of control over. And so he needs a successor. He wants it to be over at some point. So Loki has been his like chosen successor, and then by destroying the loom and then using his god powers, like I think that what Loki does in the end of this episode is actually what He Who Remains wants him to do.
Okay.
And then he's sort of relieved of his duty there.
Oh, well, he's dead.
Right. He's dead. Right. But it's kind of like the way that he died in the first season is one way, and then this is like a newer way that he dies and is replaced.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, after what happened in the first season, he just comes back.
Yeah.
Right? Because the implication here is it's kind of like in the end of The Matrix, which the whole thing with He Who Remains is very similar to Matrix Reloaded, don't you think?
How so?
Because there's the architect at the end of Matrix Reloaded. You go and you find the architect, and then the architect is like, "Well, this is what's actually going on,"
And
and
then they reboot.
right. Like, don't
Okay.
you think
Yeah,
that's
no, I can see that. Yeah.
yeah. So, I guess my question to you is, like, Kang essentially like makes Loki evolve, right? On a character level, he makes him become more noble, but then like I think on like a god level, he makes him become a different kind of god, right? Wouldn't you
Yeah.
say?
So I mean, in more recently in the comics, Loki is now the god of storytelling, which I think this really ties in well with this. So the vibes I got was that with the trees, that's Yggdrasil, the famous tree from Norse mythology, is kind of tree of life, and also wrapping in that god of storytelling, which I don't remember how exactly Loki got into that.
Yeah.
I think it started with
Al Ewing.
no, I was gonna say the storyline with oh my god, what was it called? The Guardians are very wrapped up in it, and somebody's trying to. Oh man, what the hell was that? Was that the one where they all combined the bodies to like the powers together, and they made the?
Oh yeah. It's like
I feel like
Infinity
it started. I feel like that the roots of that started in that storyline. Maybe I'm wrong.
Infinity Warp, isn't it called
Yeah,
like something like
Infinity
that?
Warp. I think that was it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was nice to see that. I feel like that was referencing something from the comics, which I just appreciate.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like the comics, what's cool about the comics is that there's been so many good writers that have tackled Loki since Loki's been Tom Hiddleston, right? Like the main one I think has been Kieran Gillen, and then I know there's Al Ewing, and I think there's been one other really good one in between them. But like they've done some like weird far out shit there with Loki.
Yeah, I remember when the first season ended. I bought a bunch of comics on Comixology, and I never read them.
You haven't read any of the Kieran Gillen stuff?
Well, I've read the Kier. I previously had read the with Young Avengers with Kid Loki on it, but
Yes.
that's all I got.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and I mean he's had a whole bunch of different forms, and we've even kind of seen that reflected in the show. There's been like Kid Loki, there's the female version of Loki. But what's interesting to me is that he's essentially a variant of the Loki that we've seen in the MCU, and then that MCU Loki is just dead, killed by Thanos. And then this guy has just gone on to become this fucking like cosmic level being, right?
Yeah, it's just also crazy to me that Loki essentially gets two redemption arcs, and they're both great.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So if this is the end of this show, right? Because it would be weird for him to like get to this like cosmic being level, and then it's like, oh, I have to come have a zany adventure for season 3. Like that doesn't make sense.
No, I don't think so. I don't think they could pull off something with him in a TV setting. I think we will absolutely see him later on when we're dealing with something related to Kang or Doom or whatever direction they're gonna go in. But I do sort of hope that Thor is involved. I think that would be a nice scene there because it's we started off with this version of Loki not being that redeemed Loki, and it's nice that but he eventually still is. So it's just a different redeemed Loki, I guess. So it would be a nice reunion to see them together, I think.
Oh, 1,000%. I would love to see that. Just more so like where Loki is emotionally now, meeting Thor. I would love to see the two of them interact. It'd be so good.
Yeah.
So, but then we have all these other supporting characters that have grown on us over time. Let's just talk about OB for a second, right? So OB essentially prints out a new book, like a sort of like a revised version of his guidebook. I was thinking, don't you think it should have been green, the color of that book?
Yes.
Okay.
And green is a very prominent color. I mean, it's kind of like that lime green, but I think that would have been a nice touch. Yeah.
Right. I don't know why the fuck it was orange, but I think that the implication was that they did not give that book to Victor Timely, right?
I think so. Yeah, because they showed him the window, and we don't see him turning back. It's the same scene, but we don't see him turning back to find the book. So yes. I don't know exactly what that means.
Yeah. And honestly, that part still kind of confuses me because it's like, did He Who Remains want Ravonna to give the book to Victor Timely? And like, is the sacred timeline not his timeline, He Who Remains timeline, but like one where he's like a good guy or something? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
what's up? I
I'm
don't know.
not sure. It's hard to tell. I mean, clearly Ravonna gets dumped at the end of time and is destroyed by Alioth, which was cool.
Okay, so
Um,
you think she's totally dead?
oh yeah, 100%.
Really? Okay. Okay.
Yes, she's dead. That's the end. She's dead. Um,
Okay.
I don't think I will. I don't want to say I'll be surprised we see these characters again, but I don't think there's much for any of these other characters to do moving
Right.
forward. That's why Loki's kind of moved to another level, and everything's kind of wrapped up for the TVA. I mean, the TVA does have a new purpose. I do believe they are just trying to hunt down Kang variants to stop them from coming to power. I think that's what they're doing, but I don't necessarily think we're going to see the TVA. Like, no, we have to see the TVA again somewhere. But I guess the only people left there are is it X5 or X15? I always get them confused.
Isn't it B? Oh
B
no, no, no.
or
It's
X.
X15, I think.
Okay, well, the lady that's been in the show both seasons, her. She's the one
Right.
that's left, and Casey's left there. Mobius is kind of left. He's going to kind of do his own thing. I don't know what he's going to go do because he's looking at a version of himself on a timeline there, but he can't replace that. So I'm a little confused as to what he's going to be doing.
Yeah.
And
I
there's
don't
Sylvie's
know.
out there too.
Yeah. I mean, Loki did say to him when they left a scene like that he could return at any time. And I don't know if that kind of implies that like that scene's happening and then a couple of minutes later he has that interaction with Loki and then he like disappears and then he could just like literally just walk back into his life. Like I don't know if that's the case.
Well, see, that's the thing. I think he was just viewing his life there because they went back so many times to change things
Yeah.
that they never got to the point where they were separated. Because when ultimately Loki goes back to where Victor Timely first gets spaghettied, but he goes and does it instead. So they don't ever get to see their lives on the other timelines at this point. So I think he's just watching a different version of himself at that point. Mobius, I mean.
Okay, that's a really good point then. Okay, I didn't even wow. You're keeping track of all this shit. Okay. Well, I do know that Mobius is supposed to be in Deadpool 3. Have you heard that?
I have not.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I
yeah.
was thinking about when I was about to say I don't think we'll see the TVA again. I'm like, oh no, we got to see the TVA in Deadpool somehow.
Right, exactly. Do you know any details about Deadpool 3?
Other than Hugh Jackman's in it and he's got the classic costume, no.
Okay. So what I've heard, and a lot of this comes from that Emergency Awesome channel, is that Deadpool is for some reason having to track down the prime version of specific characters. And I think Wolverine is like the main prime character he's trying to track down. And I don't know exactly what that means, but I think that I've heard that before, that like he's trying to find the prime version of certain characters. So
Okay.
and I think there's even an implication that Deadpool might kill off some of the X-Men characters too. So I don't know. But he's going to like different timelines.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. So I think we're gonna just have like fucking cameos galore in Deadpool 3 of
Yeah.
X-Men characters. Yeah.
Like a final. Well, I want to say final send off, but it may not be because I feel like we're gonna get that. That's kind of what we're hearing about Secret Wars. Is this going to be everything in the past? That's every movie is going to get represented somehow, basically.
Yes. I know this is kind of deviating from Loki talk, but don't you think it'd be funny in Deadpool 3 if like Deadpool goes and I mean he'll probably interact with a variant of himself, which is the other Deadpool, right?
Yeah.
But then you know how Trask is played by like two very different actors.
Yes.
That'd be kind of funny if he interacts with both versions in the movie.
That would be interesting. Yeah.
What the fuck is that guy's name from Predator? He's a director too. He's
I I don't remember.
I'll look him up. I'll
Yeah.
look him up. But then the other version is Peter Dinklage.
Yes. Yeah.
The guy Bill Duke.
Builder. Okay.
Right. Okay, so let's go back to Loki. What else do you got to say about Loki?
I guess that's it. I really, I mean, to me, this was the best season of any MCU show. Like it's especially these last 2 episodes have been fantastic. And I think it was sorely needed in this kind of state of the MCU right now. I have not seen the Marvels yet. I'm kind of gathering from your comments earlier in one of our other episodes that they have not liked it very much.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I don't want to tell you how I feel.
Okay, yeah.
I don't want to spoil anything.
Okay, got it. But we'll talk about that next week, I guess.
Yes. What I would say is go into that movie and don't think about anything that anyone has fucking said online, including me.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so then you know what, Brian? I think I agree with you. I think that this might be the best season of a MCU show as well. I mean, WandaVision is pretty high up there. We didn't really have the chance to rank all the MCU seasons. Maybe we could do that in a future episode, including this. But yeah, this show began at a point where I was probably the least excited about Marvel I could be, and then it's starting at a point. It's ending at a point where I'm like, no. There's something here. We can still go forward with all this.
There's a little gas in the tank left.
Exactly. And it's going to get us to Chevron or whatever, or to refill. I don't know. I'm just taking your metaphor. Anyway, before we turn to spaghetti, this has been Pete and Brian. We are signing off on Loki Season 2. We are still continuing our reviews of Invincible. If you guys like that show, check that out too. We have it on this channel. But then Brian and I are going to be discussing the Marvels soon. So make sure you subscribe to Comic Books Transformed, and we will see you guys next week. All right. End stream.